Hello, I'm Andrea from Zart, and today we're going to do a bit of exploring with a gel plate and some different materials that maybe you haven't thought to combine with your gel plate and incorporate with your printing. So let's get started. The first material we're going to use are slicks. Now we all love a good slick. They're fabulous. They're nice and easy and they're not messy. So what we'll do, the idea with this, and maybe I should show you first the end result. So this is something that you can create. That's the effect that you'll get with the slicks, and you can use lots of different colors if you like, but this one is a very simple one. So you basically run your slick over your plate. Now, as you can see, if I just do it once, it will create quite a faint line, and it is a little bit, I think it feels a little bit icky. It's a little bit dry feeling. If you just do the one swipe, you can kind of feel it resisting against your gel plate. But if you go over it a few times and run it backwards and forwards, suddenly it becomes a lot more creamy and you get these really interesting lines. So it ends up looking, as you can see on this, it ends up looking almost like you've done a big fingerprint with some watercolor paint. So it's up to you what kind of lines you want and how heavy you want them. But I think for this demonstration, we'll mix things up a little bit and we'll have a combination of both so you can see what happens. So you're just running the line, and see that one there, I kind of think that looks a little bit faint and I feel like doing something a little bit more gutsy. So if I really rub that stick, you can see all of a sudden it starts to really slide along the surface. I think it's a lot more satisfying using it that way. And we'll just build up our layers. And what will happen too is as you cross over colours, they do tend to blend a little bit, so you can get some interesting colour mixing happening as well. What colour haven't I used? This one. Put that in the corner there. I might try and do a bit more of a solid piece just here. And I might do another one just there. And what colour haven't I used? This bright red. We might do a line that goes through all of these colours. And then you can really see how, when we pull our print, how the colours kind of blend together a bit. Solid piece. And last colour. Let's do a line that goes across here. Now you could do, if you wanted to, I'm just doing an abstract piece, but you could do an actual illustration with slicks on there if you wanted. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with where that is now. So I'm just going to leave it for just a couple of moments for the slicks to set. And then I think I might go maybe kind of like this orange. I think we'll see how the orange goes. So you can, if you want to, use a hairdryer and just quickly buzz over the surface, but slicks really don't take that long to dry. You can just pop your finger on there. I can feel it's still like a little bit sticky. But that being said, slicks, because they're that little bit thicker, you can pretty much just go for it. So you don't want too much paint on your gel plate. And if I have put too much on, I'll show you how you can remedy that. But you want to use a nice firm brayer to spread your paint over. And you're just going to be working backwards and forwards. And the idea is to get just a thin film of paint across your surface. So just working like that. That looks pretty good. And then what I like to do is just get a piece of paper and have that somewhere handy and just roll off the excess on that piece of paper to clean up your roller. And I find that this piece, after it's got layers of colour on it, makes a really nice background starting texture. So there's no wasted papers, even if what you've done hasn't quite worked out. Everything can be used. So then we get our paper. Now with the paper, I'm using the all-purpose classroom paper. It's 140 GSM, so it doesn't get too wrinkly when you put it on your plate, even if you're using quite liquid things. And it's got a slight texture, but not too much, so it tends to pick up really nice detail as well. So we just want to rub that down a little bit and make sure that every part of that paper is nice and stuck down to your plate. Now you can, if you've got lots of time to spare, just leave your paper there for a few moments and let it really set and wait for the paint to sink in. Or if you're in a bit of a hurry, you can just tear it off. But here we go. Oh, and maybe I left that down a little bit too long, but there's a pull there. Now, if that happens, what you can do, I'll try a different little bit. You can pop some more paint down because I can see there's still some of the slick on there, and run a thin bit of paint back across, and then lift up another piece. And that will pick up a second print. Now we have got a bit of paper stuck on there, and that can happen as well. So to get rid of that, you just grab a cloth with some water and you wipe. So no biggie. Like I said, with these techniques, there's no right way or wrong way, or I messed this up, or that isn't perfect. We're just creating some beautiful patterns and marks on paper. Okay, so that was our first technique. Now we'll go on to the next one. So with the next one, we're going to be using these creamy colour watercolours, and these ones happen to be glitter. So a little bit of pre-prep for these. When you open your tin, they're dry and you need to activate them first with water. So you might want to doing this technique, add a little bit of water and just let them sit there for about 5 minutes to absorb a bit of water. It's going to save you a lot of time with mixing and bringing up colour. So the idea with this one is we're really creating an abstract, fun, sparkly, textured paper. So I'm not sure if the glitter will show up for you, but I'll angle it a few different ways. But this one's a really fun one, and definitely with this one there is no being perfect because paint is going to slide, it's going to mix and mush, and you can't control what's going to happen. So I will start with a light one here, and I can see, I don't know if you can pick up, I've had this sitting with water for a while, so it is actually nice and thick and creamy and very glittery. So for something like this, you're just basically going to lay down little marks on your plate at random. want to mix the paint around so it's nice and you're moving that glitter around, making sure there's enough in there. And you'll see that the paint, because it's a watercolour on a rubbery surface, sort of pulls a little bit and clumps together. That's part of the fun of the look that we'll have at the end. So we'll just keep adding colour until we have most of the surface covered. And maybe one more colour. Add in lots of purple. I like purple. It's a fun, happy colour. There we go. Now, if you have the time, you can just let that sit probably for about 5 minutes. But what I'm going to do after I hold down my paper is get the hairdryer and give it a bit of a blast just to speed it up. So I will come back when I've finished making a whole lot of noise. Whew. Okay, there we are. I can still see, if I look sideways, there's still some wet bits, and that's okay. The parts that are contacting first with your gel plate will come up really nice and sharp, and the rest is going to, you'll see, it will form a smudgy, fun, multicolored rainbow background. So again, we're just adding a little bit of paint to the surface. Now with this one, if you roller a whole lot, it's really going to jumble the colours up. So you kind of just want to get in there with your roller and try not to do too many passes. Now I don't know if you can see what's happening, but some of the colour is lifting and dragging into that lighter colour. And I think for this too, using a paler colour for your background is best. I think that highlights your colours best. And then we can see from the background now, I might just do a little bit on that edge and a bit on that edge. Now look at our roller. How much fun is that? This is one of those happy accidents that happens when you're creating things and you're trying things you haven't before. This is almost like a printer roller now. So when we roll that across the paper, look at that fun rainbow bit of paint on there. So definitely you can keep that paper and use it for some collage work. You might want to roll that across another print and create a really cool piece of color work. So you just, all of your papers, even if you don't think they've worked out, it's still fun. It's still going to be usable. So we give that a rub and then we lift, and then there we go. So you'll see it's still wet. You're going to have to put this aside and let it dry. But where you have created your dabs, it's really glittery. And then in the background, you've got this really nice multicolored pattern happening. So again, we can do a bit of a ghost print with this. I might just add a tiny bit more of this pale color just to help lift what's on there. And then rub that across. And you will get a nice pastel piece. Let's take another piece. Now you can use, if you want to, just normal printer paper as well, but I just find especially with this technique, with the wetter paint, it does tend to get a little bit more soft, and sometimes there can be paper tearing when you take away that final piece. So there we've got a much softer, you can see the colours are starting to grey up a little bit because all of the colours are really mixing together, but you've still got, if you look at it, you've still got some nice glitter happening there. So I think that is a really fun technique. I have tried, I'm just going to wipe it down again. I have tried painting an image. I've tried it with flowers. I tried a tropical water scene. It sort of worked and it sort of didn't. So what happens is, because once you pick up the roller and go across, it picks up part of the color. So you'll find that parts of the picture repeat themselves across, which could be a really good thing, or it could be a disaster depending on how finicky you are, but that's just something to think about when you're using this technique and using watercolors. I did also try using watercolor markers, and they were a similar effect, just they're a lot finer. So maybe for, you know, the grade 6s who are more into detail, that might be a better way for them to incorporate using something water-based on your gel plate. Alrighty, now we've had some fun with glitter. We will do the last technique, which with all of these techniques, I find with gel plate printing, it's all hit and miss. I think there is definitely a lot of experimentation and exploration that happens. What you imagine you're going to get sometimes isn't what comes out. What you pull, you might go, oh my God, that's a disaster. I hate that it hasn't worked quite the right way. So sometimes you just have to play with like how much paint you're putting on the surface, how long you're leaving your paper on there for, the type of paper that you're using, the surface. They're all going to affect how your prints turn out. So just, that's part of the exploration. You might find that one student has come up with a really sharp, nice print. So, you know, ask them, what technique did you use? How much paint did you put on? And learn from each other, because it really isn't an exact science, gel plate printing, and I think that's part of the fun. Now, with this one, what we're going to do is we're going to use a crayon as a resist. So what we want to do is draw something, could be an image, a pattern. I'll do a pattern for today, on our paper, and we want to really press down firmly. You really want to get a nice bit of that crayon onto the surface of your paper, because that is what, or the waxiness of your crayon is what is going to stop the paint from coming off the surface of your gel plate. And what you'll see when we actually do this, what gets left behind is the pattern. So if you just do like a really faint little line like this, it's really not going to do very much. The paint, when we roll this plate and this sticks down on the plate, the paint colour is just going to seep into there. You're not going to end up with the negative of the pattern that we're creating. So really get in there with your crayons. Okay, I think that's about enough. I'll just shake the crumbs off. And I think for this one, we will go a nice deep colour. And again, not too much. And just roll backwards and forwards to get a nice even coating. Now, if you do find that you think you've overjuiced your plate, you can just roll your extra paint off and then come back again and just keep doing that, keep taking off the excess. But what we're going to do now is, so crayon, down onto your plate. Give it a press. And lift. So you have this piece here, which you can use. And then we're just going to let that sit for a few moments and dry, because we really want that to set in place and not be running for this one. So again, I might give it a bit of a blast with the hairdryer. Batten down the hatches with some paint, otherwise we'll have paper flying everywhere. There we go. I think that one was quite quick. Okay, and I think we will use this colour here. I think that will give a nice contrast. So again, not too much paint. Should I go a tiny bit more for luck? And then I can see there's still some sparkle on this one. I'm just going to run that across. And another piece of paper. Ooh. Okay, down we go. And we'll see. This one is the one that I think that is really hit and miss, depending on how heavily you've pressed with that crayon, how much paint you have. There we go. So that is our first run, and then that is our second run. So that's a really fun technique. And again, you could draw a scene, do an illustration, you could do some writing if you wanted to, and use that as your print. But with this one, you get two pieces of paper that are beautifully patterned. So that's it, 3 different ways that you can incorporate other materials into your printing process. They can be used, like I said, for background papers and textures, and then you can cut them up later and use them in collage work, or they can be final pieces depending on how your prints have turned out. But I hope you've found that fun. I hope it encourages you to explore different materials and different ways of using your gel plate, and I will see you again with something new. Thank you. Bye.